Yeah, so usually, like as a performer, the residencies are usually 3-4 days long. But now that this time I have a month, I actually took time to absorb the city, absorb the culture, and it wasn't so rushed. And initially at first I didn't really know what to do for the whole month, because usually performers just go and play. But then incidentally I'm also a composer, so I decided to take what I can from the Japanese culture and compose something new, and at the same time work with the students on a more longer term basis, so it's not just like dun, 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 and we're done. Bye-bye kind of thing. So it took time also to develop a little bit of relationship with the students, so it's not like I'm a total stranger and the first time I'm commenting on them I'm like, hi, nice to meet you. So we were friends first, and then we started working together, so that makes the whole musical and artistic conversation a lot more on an equal ground level, instead of just it's like talking to a friend about some deep concepts rather than talking to a complete stranger. You listen to a friend more than a stranger. The students, actually the first impression I got was, why are there so many girls in the studio? Because in the US, and especially my university, in percussion especially, it's mostly boys. So, and then I noticed the differences, because since it's mostly female, their playing is a lot more sensitive than a lot of other people I've usually worked with. Naturally, boys, they tend to play things louder, and they don't think as sensitively, they don't think as in details, they just kind of go. So the students here tend to be a lot more sensitive, a lot more delicate in the touch and the sound. And also the level of playing is very high, and I'm not sure it's because they know I'm coming and I'm primarily a marimba player, but the playing I heard, the marimba playing was very, very high. Some are technically very proficient, the older students, and even the younger students, they're musically very natural in a way. And also I think because it's in the Japanese language, there are more inflectuations in the tone, so the natural phrasing, the way they naturally play things, is a lot more flowing rather than percussive, like da 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 da. So I perform and I compose at the same time, I'd say, and I teach too, obviously. So I'd say my primary job is a performer and a teacher and composing, and then teacher and then composing. It's because I started off as a piano player, and then later I learned percussion, and I really started writing because I wanted to. There was no explanation why, I just needed to create something. And at the same time, later I found there's a big gap in the marimba repertoire literature. So I started creating some of my own, imitating some piano styles. But then recently I also started moving away from that again and started really composing as a composer instead of a marimba player. There's a subtle difference there. And when I composed as a marimba player, I looked for what would satisfy my need as a performer. But recently I started composing more for what would satisfy my need as a composer and trying to create something musically new. Not just unique for the instrument, but unique as music itself. And I think being a composer helps me as a performer because, as a performer I have to realize the composition as a composer, and then in doing that, the performance becomes a lot more fluid and a lot more understood. So it elevates to sort of a different level, and especially there are a lot of percussionists who are also composers too because of the repertoire that's lacking. You see less so with pianists and violinists because there's more masterworks already, like Bach, Beethoven, Brahms. Percussion doesn't have it. So I'd say I compose really out of a need basis than really, actually, no, it's half as a need basis to fill up the gap in the repertoire, and half as sometimes I just want to create something. Okay, for some percussionists know my regular language, but but that's more of a romantic style, like Rachmaninoff, Chopin, that kind of language. But I actually have a lot of pieces that are in different languages too, just nobody plays them. But so this new piece I wrote is not really in the style of the romantic language. It's my first, I'd say, like pattern-based piece. It's not really Steve Reich kind of minimalist. It just kind of stays static. This piece still has direction, but it's based on changes of direction. And the title is, I don't know what it is called in Japanese, but it's a Chinese character that means thought or meditation. And I think it means something in Japanese too, but it's just based on my impressions of visiting so many temples and shrines in Japan, and that whole idea of, life just continuously changing and exploring, but then it's growing on a very slow tempo of life, and in this piece a slow tempo of music too. So it just continuously but non-stoppingly growing and growing until the very end, and then to some point you realize it's just music, and life just kind of, you can take a pause at it and then you look at it at a very quiet level and just observe what happens, and then it all comes to a big circle kind of like that. So the piece is basically based on that concept. And technically, because this is for the students and we have limited time to rehearse, and I wanted to do that to keep them on edge. So technically it's not very hard, but musically it has, I think it's pretty much an 8-minute long phrase just to teach the students a little bit of how to explore the larger structure of music and breathe, and the musically important things rather than technical.